Everyone, this is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today I have on my channel Rhonda McKnight. Welcome, Rhonda. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. Now tell us about yourself.
I am so about me. What am I? I am I'm obviously an author. I write Christian fiction stories. I am a freelance editor. I'm a mom. I homeschool. I garden. That's kind of the gist of who I am on today. But I currently live in South Carolina. I lived in Atlanta for 20 years, and I grew up in New Jersey. So I still consider myself to be a Jersey girl. That's never going to change. But I have been living in the South for a little over 20 years. So I think that's about it about me.
Okay, tell us about your books.
Okay, so I actually have 15 books that are written under my brand of Rhonda McKnight. So I'm going to talk about 2 of my series because I got to keep it short. Obviously, not talking about 15 books. And so the first one that I'm going to talk about is from a series that I call the the Samaritan Woman series. And the first book, the series launched. I've been published this past year. I celebrated my 10th year being a published author, and with my first novel, which was Secrets and Lies, but my second novel was really one of the books that kind of, I think, if I had to use the word put me on the map, a cliche like put me on the map, it would be this book, An Inconvenient Friend. And The Inconvenient Friend is a story of a mistress who decides that the best way to get her man is to get to know his wife better. And so she goes to the women's church and she looks up on a women's mentoring program that allows her to get closer. What she doesn't expect to find is someone that she respects. So the relationship that she develops with this woman now makes it difficult for the plan that she had to steal her husband. So that's An Inconvenient Friend. And it's kind of a story about the things that women do to each other in the name of getting a man and keeping a man. I wanted to explore. So it's not your typical mistress story. It's more of because it's not really a story about the mistress and the man, and we have tons of those. That's been done like a million times. It's been done well by a lot of people, but for me, my story, An Inconvenient Friend, is more about the relationship between these 2 women. It's a book about sisterhood. And so that is what I think makes it different, and that's what made it stand out for a lot of people. And the character, the main character in the book is a woman named Samaria Jacobs. And so I've written about Samaria through a series of 5 books. And so she has resonated with a lot of readers because even though she's a bad girl, I've had people tell me that they finished reading the book and they prayed for Samaria. And I said, Lord, you praying for a character in a book, And so, and that makes me laugh. It makes me laugh, and it makes me happy because it really means the book resonated with someone. But I think in some respects, you're praying around that situation for other people, maybe that or you even know that you may know personally. But that's An Inconvenient Friend. So An Inconvenient Friend is available on Kindle and in paperback. And Kindle is $4.99. Like I said, it's the first book in that series. And the book I have self-labeled the book, the Samaritan Woman series. I never knew when I wrote this first book about Samaria that I would write more books about her. So when my publisher published it, and it was published with Urban Books, which was Urban Christian, which was an imprint of Carl Weber's, it does not say Samaritan Woman series. So that's why I say that's like a label that I put on the series. So that's the first book in the series. Am I just going to keep going?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the next book in that series is What Kind of Fool? And What Kind of Fool is the follow-up It's the aftermath. And so in An Inconvenient Friend, we met Samaria, the love of Samaria's life, someone who hurt her. And, usually, when you have people hurting people, Samaria is a person that hurts people. When you have people hurting people, usually they've been hurt. You've heard the saying, hurting people, hurt people, hurt people. Mm-hmm. So she experienced some pain and some rejection. And in the first book we meet this guy who's from her past at kind of at the end of the book. And then we pick up here in What Kind of Fool? And What Kind of Fool is the aftermath of the affair. What happened after, between in the relationship with Samaria and Angelina, who was the main character in the first book. And What Kind of Fool kind of answers the question, what kind of fool cheats on a woman that he loves, and what kind of fool takes a man back who's been unfaithful? And so it's a book that explores the idea or the concept of restoration of a marriage. Can a marriage be saved? And I think that a lot of times, particularly in Christian fiction, you can have a lot of books, and I'm not criticizing anybody's books, let me just say that, okay? Because we all write the stories that we feel the world needs, or the story that's on our heart. But I think sometimes books can make it seem like you just kind of pray and you come back together. And that's not realistic. I think that, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you pray and everything's all right. Everything comes together. That's not, if it's that way for someone, I have to say, I think they're fooling themselves, Infidelity is a hard thing to deal with. And so I think in What Kind of Fool, I take the characters on a journey to their personal truth. And I won't say whether or not the couple make it. All I can tell you is read the book and find out. So that's What Kind of Fool. In the third book in the series, I don't have an actual copy. I sold out all my copies at an event before COVID-19. And so hit us and we got locked in. So, but this is a picture of the cover. It's Righteous Ways. And here we have Samaria, the next book in Samaria series. And in Righteous Ways, we get more of her. Like I said, it's the third book in the series. Samaria might be about to go to prison in this one. I'm not going to say why or how, excuse me. But readers see how God blesses her when she takes the focus off her own problems and helps someone who has even a more desperate situation than she does. So I think it's kind of a story about giving of yourself, even in times that are hard for you. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And how we can all do that. Excuse me, I'm gonna take some water. We can be a blessing even when we don't feel like we can be a blessing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's Righteous Ways. Excuse me. Almost There is the fourth book in the series. And let me say something about Righteous Ways. Now, for anyone who is not a person, I know sometimes people feel like I got to go back to the beginning of a series. I got to know all the history. What I do is I write a standalone story always. Okay. So if you're not a person who doesn't feel like you have to go back. If you're like, if the author can keep me current on a story, I'm good. I'll pick up with wherever they are. Righteous Ways can be the first book for any reader. Like, they don't have to go back to An Inconvenient Friend or What Kind of Fool. They're both great novels. If you look at the reviews on Amazon, they've been out for a while. They've had a lot of readers. People have loved them. I love them. But Righteous Ways can get you current on Samaria's journey before you get into Almost There and the final book, which is Shame on You. Okay, so Righteous Ways is a book about three people on the brink of achieving all they've dreamed since childhood, and the past trying to come up and interfere with their goals. Okay, so in this book, even though it's a part of the Samaritan Woman series, Samaria is actually not in this book. This book is about her man, Makai Johnson, and his background, because his background is very important. He's a successful music producer, and he's got a lot of talent and connections, but he needs the right artist to take his label to the next level. And so he pursues this young woman. Her real name is Benita Jones, but it's Benzai. She's a hot new R&B artist. She's been nominated for some Grammys. She's got the sound and the look that he wants. And so he pursues her in this book, attempting to sign her in a record deal. And so also in the book, we meet one of his former girlfriends, somebody that he was involved with, several years ago. And she is the sister of an enemy of his. And so things kind of go bad with him and this guy. And the guy's name is Xander Kelly. I introduced Xander Kelly, who is a very popular rapper. His rap name is Killazoo. And he is one of the nastiest rappers in terms of his reputation and his lyrics in the industry. And he hates Makai. And so we meet Makai, we meet a woman from his past, we meet the artist that Benzai that he's pursuing, and we meet his enemy. And all of these things, the backstory in this is really, really takes readers, I think, on a fun journey. I would say fun, a fun journey, a deep journey into who Makai is, because readers have come to love Makai. By the time we get to Righteous Ways, people absolutely love Makai. I mean, he's a hero. He's a woman's hero. He's a very good-looking, successful, loyal man. We see all that about Makai. People love Makai, but we also learn what his flaws are in this book, the mistakes that he made to get to where he was. And so I really enjoyed, because I think the characters are multi-layered. We are. Nobody's perfect, and we find that out in Almost There. And so this book is actually what I call a prequel to Shame on You. So really a person to read these two books and be good. But like I said, I recommend Righteous Ways if they really want to kind of, know a little bit more about Samaria before they get to this particular story. And so then the series ends with Shame on You, which took me a long time to get this to my readers. I mean, people were like hounding me like, Rhonda, it's been years. But I think that most people have told me after they get it, okay, that was worth the wait. Kind of. So I'll read the back cover on it. And it's Grammy Award-winning R&B princess Benzai is a rising superstar. When the man she loves marries someone else, she rebounds from hurt with one of the nastiest rappers in the business. Will her choice cost her not only her stardom, but her life? Makai Johnson has one of the hottest new record labels in the industry, but when he reneges on a promise, his personal and business life spiral into an abyss. Will he lose everything he's worked for trying to do the right thing? And then Samaria Jacobs is paying her debt to society. She's trying to live right, but challenges are coming in from all sides. Will she come out of prison a better woman or revert to her old shameful ways? And so so this series began with betrayal, okay? But it ends with deadly revenge, okay? So what I love about this series from the beginning to the end is, and I'll mention this, that Benzai is in love with Makai. And so we started the series with Samaria being a mistress, pursuing a man. And in the end, there is a woman pursuing her husband hard. And she's locked up. And so, and he is tied to her. She's one of his artists. And so really the only artist that really makes him any money. So this is not a relationship that he can just walk away from. And so I think what I like about where I went as a writer and what the journey I took readers on in this series is that we see Samaria's life come full circle. She was this woman, and now she's dealing with this woman in the end. She recognizes herself. So it still becomes a story. It still continues to be, I think, throughout, a story about the complexities of relationships between women around men. So that's what I love about the series, and that's why I felt very strongly that when I got to the end of this book, and I could write more about Samaria. I mean, I really could, but I don't want to. I feel like we're done. Shame on you, tied it all up, and so we're finished. So that's my Samaritan Woman theory.
Okay.
So those are the first 5 books. I said I was going to talk about 6 books. I think I'm going to talk about 8 books real quick.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get to did you have any questions for me?
Not yet. Go ahead.
You can wait till you get to, okay, so I want to talk about my winter series. And the reason I want to talk about my winter series is winter series has been my most recent, the last book in the winter series, the Winter Baby, has been my most recent series that readers have just loved. And you know, the interesting thing is it started with The Winter Wedding, which is a story of a young woman whose life got out of control, whose life was destroyed by a video that was released on
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and so now I will talk about my, okay, I've added glasses because I'm reading and I need them. I'll talk about the winter, the winter series, which is has been a favorite series for readers. And I love it. It's the story of Tamar Johnson and a man named Stephen Pierce. And Tamar is a woman whose life was destroyed by social media. I was inspired to write the story when it was like Thanksgiving weekend, and I was on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. And some of my younger cousins, you know, I was just sort of looking at some of their posts and things. And, you know, I was just seeing like a whole lot of skin and a little more flesh than I was thought that they should be showing, you know, on a permanent basis. And because the internet is permanent, you know, when you put pictures and things up on the internet, these things never go away. I know someone whose daughter lost a job because she was being hired and they screened her social media and decided not to hire her. She had a hire letter and everything. And it was a really good opportunity for her. And it made me think about some of the things that, you know, sometimes young people don't think about the permanency of things that they put on the internet. And so I was inspired to write a story about that. And so Tamar is a young woman whose life was destroyed by a viral video of her that got released, of her losing her virginity on prom night. She's a preacher's daughter. So, you know, you add that layer to it. And so she basically, after this video, kind of went into hiding for 12 years. She did not have a relationship with her father. She did not come home. And she certainly does not have a relationship with this young man who she was in love with. And so he is Stephen Pierce. He's a very successful football player, very famous, and is known to all his fans as being a devoted Christian. You know, he prays at games. He's been celibate for the last 5 years. His whole brand is built on his Christian values. And nobody knows that he was the guy in this sex tape, for lack of a better word. And so he decides that he puts a post up on social media to try to which forces her out of hiding. And so she attends their high school reunion where sparks fly, you know, and they, for the first time in 12 years, they've seen each other. And so that's the winter reunion. And then the second book in the series is The Winter Wedding. And in this book, Tamar, we found out that even though it's been the 12 years and Tamar's been in hiding, that she has a secret, you know, so they have to get to a place where she forgives Stephen for everything that kind of goes down in the winter reunion. And but then we find out that Tamar has a secret. And I'm just going to read the back cover copy for this book. And so it begins with, "Will you marry me?" From the moment Stephen Pierce asked the question, he and Tamar Johnson's lives spiral out of control. Tamar Johnson has had enough scandal to last 10 lifetimes. Her reluctant claim to fame as the infamous woman in the viral video of her losing her virginity on prom night was shameful enough to send the preacher's daughter into hiding for 12 years. Now she's back in the public eye, dealing with one scandalous and painful situation after the next, and praying the secret she's kept won't be the one to finally destroy her and the people she loves. Life's been good for NFL's darling Stephen Pierce, but now the superstar running back's problems are catching up with him. Tamar Johnson has said yes to his marriage proposal, but he still can't get a read on her feelings. His life off the field gets messier as he once again becomes the target of media coverage and paparazzi photographs. A trashy reality television show has everyone wondering if he's the celibate Christian man he's claimed to be all these years. When tragedy happens, Stephen is challenged in ways he never expected. Will he stand strong in the face of adversity, or will a crisis of faith reveal who he really is to himself and his fans? Mm-hmm. So that's the winter reunion. Now, let me just show you. The winter wedding was a small little story. I wrote it literally in 7 days. The winter reunion is a big old, that's a long book. It's the longest book I've written in a long time. It's a very, I think readers were really excited to really dig into Stephen and Tamar's story when the winter wedding came out. And this past Christmas or Thanksgiving, I released what I think is the last book in this series, The Winter Baby. And The Winter Baby is a story about, Tamar and Stephen have survived all their scandal. But now, will they survive the breakup of their best friends? Okay. So the back cover for this is An Unexpected Road Trip, Angry Emotions, a Recipe for a Perfect Storm. Clyde Stowe is a reformed bachelor turned devoted boyfriend, but when Kim Haynes refuses to break her vow of celibacy, their romance ends. An unexpected road trip forces them together where angry, unresolved emotions push them further apart. What they don't expect is for nature to intervene in ways they aren't prepared for. Kim made it through Hurricane Katrina, but is she strong enough to survive this storm? Can Clyde find the courage to turn back to the God he abandoned long ago? And will Tamar and Stephen survive them both? So that's The Winter Baby. So this series has been extremely popular with my readers. I really have loved writing about these characters. I just have loved writing about these characters. They've been really, really, they have surprised me as they have grown in my consciousness, as, because even The Winter Baby, I did not expect it to, when I thought of the idea of The Winter Baby, I thought it was just going to be another story about Stephen and Tamar, but it's the story about Stephen and Tamar and their best friends. And I really enjoyed writing this particular story. It really stretched me as a writer. So that's six of my, is it six or that's 8 of my 15 titles, 15 fiction titles. I also have some nonfiction books, a couple of prayer books and a prayer journal. And then, like I said, I've had some other books that I've written, but yeah, so that's, so thank you for letting me introduce my books.
You're welcome. Now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How do you develop your plots and characters?
Well, usually what happens is, I am not a writer who ever knows that she has a series. I start with a character. A character starts to swirl around in my head. And I start with a situation, like I said, with the Winter Reunion. I'm thinking about the power of social media to destroy a person's life. And I just, and I think I was watching the ID channel. There's a TV show on the ID channel called The Internet Ruined My Life. Oh my gosh, wow. Like,
I need to watch that.
Have you ever seen that show?
No,
My gosh, the power of the internet to destroy a person's life. Like, some stories that we see on the internet that go viral that are really bad stories about something a person did, we look at it and, you know, we may forward it or chat about it or talk about it, but behind the scenes, that person's life is being torn apart. These people have to move, they have to change their names, they get death threats. It gets really bad. We live in a culture that really decides that if you've done something bad, you are better off dead and we should kill you. Like, they get death threats. And so for Tamar, so I really just, so that, like I said, between those two things, I decided I want to write a story about someone who regrets something going viral on social media. And so I started with Tamar. I started with the video. I just sort of, let me think, the winter wedding. When I get to the sequel, usually when I get to the second book, the characters from the first, the way that I know I'm going to have a sequel is the characters from the first book keep talking to me. Like, they won't, they keep talking in my head. They keep, like, they literally will, Stephen will say, well, I got something to say. I still got something to say. And so I go, okay. And so I listen. You know, like right now, I just mentioned, I said, I think this is the last book in this series. But now I got this whole background on Clyde. Like, and I'm like, oh man, seriously? Like, I'm going to have another book in this series? Like, he has this tremendous background. I'm trying to decide if it's going to be Clyde's story or if I'm going to just take it, make it a new book about somebody else. But I think readers who have read the series will be like, oh yeah, okay, I will read more about Clyde. So it's kind of hard to decide, but I'm a plotter. So what I do is I typically, when a story comes to me or a character comes to me, I will sit down and just start typing. I will just start writing out the story, whatever it is. And then I stop. Like, I'll usually get through the first chapter, maybe the first 2 chapters, and then I stop and I go back and I do a complete outline of the story. And because I don't like to write without an outline, I'm a structured writer. I write much faster if I have an outline. Draft writing makes it stressful to me. So the whole idea of not knowing what part of the book is coming next, I don't like to do that. I did it with my first novel and it took me 4 years to write it. And now I told you I can write, you know, I wrote this in 3 weeks. I wrote, you know, Winter Reunion in 7 days. You know, I mean, it took me like 4 months to write The Winter Wedding because it's a much bigger novel. So I don't write everything fast, but it takes away the stress outlining. And then I also have partners, writing friends who I plot my stories out with to make sure that the story is solid, that the characters are solid. I'm a real character work person. I go deep. There are always lots of layers in my stories in terms of my people's backgrounds. I'm one of those people that likes to, I like to take a person and just, I want them to be as messed up as they possibly can be. Mm-hmm. I want them to have had as much trauma as they possibly could stand. And then when they are as messed up as they possibly can be, boom, let's kick off a story about them. So that's what I like to do. So I think a lot about that. I spend a lot of time on my character work, even as a developmental editor. And I don't know, you know, you may or may not know this. I used to acquire books, Christian fiction books for Brown Girls Books, which is the line that was started by Victoria Christopher Murray and Rashonda Tate Billingsley. So I released 4 books under Brown Girls Fate, the imprint there. And so one of the things that I looked for was a really complex story about complicated people. And so so that's really important to me. So so that's how I start. I start with whatever's pops in my head. Sometimes it's a concept, sometimes it's actually the person talking. And I just kind of let it swirl around and do a whole lot of, well, what if this and what if that? And then, well, what could have happened to her to make her this way? And I keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I outline and I start writing.
Okay. How hard is it to establish and maintain a career in writing?
It depends on, I think that varies. It depends on what you want your career to look like. You know, there's some people that release books every few years. There's some people that release books every few months. You know, it depends on your genre. It depends on what else you're doing. Are you working full time? Are you just writing? How did you get started in publishing? Do you had to build up did you start off self-published and you had to build the whole thing by yourself? I think that there are a multitude of answers to that question, because I think that all authors individually decide what success looks like to them, and they should, as an individual, because if you let sales or reviews or even readers define your success, you will end up like one of the most famous authors in the world, who was Ernest Hemingway, an alcoholic drunk who, died from, I think, cirrhosis of the liver. People will drive you, people's expectations of you when you're an artist will make you crazy. So you have to define that success for yourself. Now, for me, I have worked full-time up until last year. Well, I had a break back in 2015 when I was actually working with Brown Girls, but I have had a career in public service and human services. And so when I was working full-time, my writing was sort of, I would not say it was a hobby, but it wasn't a business in the sense that it is now. Mm-hmm. I wrote when I wanted to write. I wrote when I had, initially I wrote on a schedule because I had a contract with my publisher. But then once I became an indie author, I kind of wrote when I wanted to write. I released a book here and there, like 2013, I released a book. Then I followed up with another one in 2014. Then another one, I think 7 months later, 2014. Then I had another one come out at the end of 2014. And so what I've always done is clusters. Like I'll have a book come out every 6 months, and then I'll go away for 2 years. And then I'll have a book come out, mm-hmm. I'll release multiple times. Like last year, I released The Winter Wedding, Shame on You, and The Winter Baby. I ghost wrote a book for a client, and I released 3 short novellas under a pen name. I wrote a lot last year. But then I'll have years where, like this year, The Winter Baby came out in November. I haven't released a book since the beginning of January under Rhonda McKnight. And so I've been editing. Editing work is heavy for me in the beginning of the year. So I typically work with clients that I've had for a long time on helping them get their books ready. So I think it really just varies. I think that you have to decide what success looks like to you, mm-hmm. how much time you can give to it, how much energy you can give to it. Everyone doesn't have stories falling into their head all the time. Like I have stories left and right, they keep coming. It's not like that for everybody. Some people have to have to come up with a story, So I think that's a hard question to answer. And I think all of our journeys and all of our careers are very different.
Okay. How can readers find you and your books?
So my website is rhondamcknight.net, and that's Rhonda with an H, or RHONDAMCKNIGHT. I spend a lot of time on social media, so author Rhonda McKnight on Instagram, and on Facebook. I'm Facebook/Books by Rhonda. You inbox me, I'll respond, but all of my books are available on Amazon. Everything's available on Kindle. Everything's available on paperback. Some of my books are available on Barnes & Noble. Certainly my books that were published, my first 4 books that were with a traditional publisher, are available for ordering everywhere, in bookstores everywhere. And so that's how people can find out more about me. I have some excerpts from some of my books on my website. But in this electronic age, if you really want to sample somebody's book and you have a Kindle or Kindle app, you just and go to Amazon and pull up the first 20% of the book and read it to determine if, you like the writer's style or voice. So, but either way works. You can go to my website or you can just go to Amazon.
Okay. How about audiobooks? Have you ever thought about venturing into audiobooks?
I have. None of my books are on audiobooks. When I was with Urban Christian, they started putting books on audiobooks like right after my fourth title. My contract was done with them. And so they did go back and put some books on audiobook, but not very many. So I do own the audiobook rights to those books. I have thought about an audiobook project for my personal titles, but I'm going to say this, and a lot of people do audiobooks, and that's great for them. I don't see it as a audiobook production. A quality audiobook production is expensive. And so for me, I would have to, and even for a major publisher, they don't put every book they produce on audiobook. They put the books on audiobook that sell really well for them. You know what I mean? So they determine if there's a need for audiobooks. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there looking for audiobooks, and every so often I will have a reader ask me, are your books on audiobook? But I have not I don't feel like I've had enough of that question, the demand, to incur the expense of, like I said, a quality production now, because you can put an audiobook out and you can read it yourself. But I would like to, whenever I do something, I'm sure you can tell by my covers, by, the quality of my books, that I am a quality person. And if I can't do something really right, then I don't want to do it at all. And so, and that's not me judging how anybody else's audiobooks, but I've seen some pretty substandard audiobooks. And so I don't want to be that person. So I think once I would like to get something in audiobook, but it just hasn't, like I said, I just have to feel like I see the demand for it more. And I do know that audiobooks are hot. I know that. I've looked at the data, but I've also looked at the data and seen that it's hot for certain genres. It's not necessarily that audiobooks are real hot for mystery. They're real hot for fantasy. They're real hot in certain markets. Mm-hmm. And mine's is not one of them. So I have not felt the need to make that investment. That's a long answer to the question, which could have just been no.
Thank you for explaining. Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
I guess I just want to say that, I do write Christian fiction, but I want I think sometimes when people hear Christian fiction, they think that it's going to be like a preachy story. Yeah. They're going to feel like they're going to see sermons, and they're going to be in church, and they're sitting down to be entertained. I think that I, as a writer, first and foremost, that my job is to entertain a reader. I'm not here to give you a message. I feel like readers take away the message that if you get a message, it's the message that God wanted you to get, number one. Number two, I like to write stories about wounded people. To me, when I say I write a realistic story, I like to write stories about people who are not perfect, who have not always loved the Lord, and people who have loved the Lord, but still make human mistakes. Like I make human mistakes all the time. None of us are perfect. And so if somebody injures you, somebody hits you, you hit back. I think that's our natural instinct. It's not to just, I'll drop on my knees and pray. She chasing my husband. Let me drop on my knees and pray. No, I'm going to get a knife. I'm going to stab all of y'all. And so, whatever the normal, natural reaction to pain or to somebody doing something to you, I think that's what I write. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that we all respond in human ways. Yeah, you may eventually get to a point where you're like, Lord, I really shouldn't have did that. But in my books, it's usually after they done did it. It's not, I like to take characters on a journey. And they may find redemption, but in my opinion, if you look at the scripture, at the Bible, redemption is a process. And so in my books, it's a process. And that's what I think makes my books special to the readers who read them. They, you know, that's kind of my hallmark, is I write stories that touch women's hearts, but the road to redemption is truly a process that I think mirrors real life. So what am I saying? I write realistic stories about Christians, not perfect little people all packaged. So if you're a person that doesn't want to read about perfect little people, you want to read about realistic people who are trying to find their way through situations using their faith, but not always knowing how to do that, not always being successful with it, then my brand of Christian fiction would be a story that you would enjoy. So give it a try. Don't count the genre out because you read some preaching book that was like everybody was perfect and praying and doing the right thing. Don't count the genre out for that, because you know that's certainly not the kind of book that I write.
Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, and you know, stay safe. And these, you know, look, I want to make an announcement. These eyebrows, see, and none of us, this video may come out somebody could be looking at this video 20 years from now and going, why that author's eyebrows? Why she got eyebrows done? Because we're quarantined during coronavirus, okay? COVID-19. And all I could do was work with some makeup. So these eyebrows are some been in the house since March 14th eyebrows. Y'all remember that. Don't hold these eyebrows against me.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. You stay safe.
All
and
right.
Be blessed.
All right. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.